Tonight, we're not just telling a story. We're stepping into a world where praying in your own language could cost you your land or your life. And a time when your faith made you illegal, and your culture something to be hunted. You don't know it yet. Nah, but today, this day will echo through time. And one field plowed by silence, and will grow 1,000 stories of resistance. Now close your eyes. Hourglass time travel initiation. You wake up in the year 1725, and in the heart of County Offaly, Ireland. NTHE thatch roof above you is leaking. Again, the air is cold, damp, soaked in the smoke of a dying peat fire. The faint bleating of a goat echoes outside, carried in on wind that smells of wet wool and manure. You blink, your palms are cracked. Your breath fogs in the air. You are barefoot on an earthen floor, and your name, your true name, must never be spoken aloud. Not here, and not now, and not in front of strangers. Because you are a Catholic tenant farmer, and that alone makes you a criminal and footprint. Let the day begin, and cloud with rain. The first moment outside, a thin mist rises from the soaked grasslands. Dew clings to every blade like frost, shimmering silver under a bleak gray sky. The land is beautiful, heartbreakingly so, but it does not belong to you. Not legally, even though your grandfather's bones are buried beneath this field, even though your people have tilled it for generations, even though you remember the songs they sang while digging these rows. Your feet sink into the muck as you step out. You glance toward the hedgerow, where a crumbled stone wall once marked your clan's border. Now, it marks nothing but silence. In-house your role. You are a tenant, in a papist. A tolerated inconvenience on land leased by an absentee landlord in London. You pay rent, but you own nothing. You sow the oats, shear the sheep, milk the cow, but it all leaves on carts. NIF, you fall behind in rent, you're evicted. If you try to buy land, you can't. If your children try to go to school, they'll be punished for learning Irish or Latin. If you go to Mass in public, you'll be fined. This is Ireland under the penal laws, and survival is not guaranteed. The Elias rules you live under. They call it law, that thing, but it feels more like slow suffocation. You may not vote. You may not own a horse worth more than £5. You may not join the military. You may not hold public office. You may not be a lawyer, doctor, or teacher. New priest? He's underground. He changes locations weekly, traveling by night through moors and marshes. His name is never spoken, only whispered. If caught, he could be exiled, or worse. If someone reports him, they'll receive a reward. You've seen it happen. You remember the day a boy from your parish, a boy no older than 15, led a redcoat patrol to a secret mass rock. He smiled as they took the old father away. You never saw the priest again. You never forgot the boy's smile. Rice plant food, and land your family eats potatoes. When you have them, NBUT, last week's rains drowned half the crop. The other half might rot in the ground. The landlord's agent still came, demanding barley for shipment. You gave it. You had to. even if it meant slicing the last of the oats with trembling hands while your youngest coughed in the corner from cold and hunger. You think about how much easier life might be if you just converted. You become Anglican. Swear loyalty to the crown. You could lease land, attend school, be respected. NBUT. Then what would you be? Thought balloon foreshadowing whispered. One field plowed by silence, and will grow 1,000 stories of resistance. NTHAT phrase haunts you. It came from your grandmother. She whispered it when they burned her catechism books, when they took her rosary and laughed. And now you carry it, in silence, in suffering, and in prayer. And even now, as you kneel by a crooked tree in the hills, the new church, even now as your children whisper Latin under their breath before sleep, even now when all you want is warmth and a full belly, you survive because you must, and because someone has to remember. And fog, the world you walk, and no town crier announces your worth. No scribe records your name, but still you exist. NTHE roads are dirt. The boots that march them are foreign. You don't trust anyone who knocks, especially if they speak English with an officer's rhythm. You walk to barter in the village, your clothes mark you, but you smile anyway. Too much pride is dangerous. Too little is death. In a world like this, survival is its own rebellion. End scroll, end of part 1. Set up for part 2. The night comes fast in Ireland. The air thickens with peat smoke and whispered prayers, and you lay down on a straw mattress, your stomach nearly empty. NBUT sleep does not come easy, because tomorrow you'll rise before the sun, to cut turf from a bog that you don't own, to pay rent on a field that was your grandfather's, to worship a God you're not allowed to name. NBUT even now, even in darkness, you remember your grandmother's words. One field plowed by silence, and will grow 1,000 stories of resistance. Tomorrow, the struggle begins. Before your eyes fully open, something burns your nose. Rank sourness, mildew, sheep dung, and the smoke of last night's peat fire. You slept near it to stay warm, curled beside your siblings like pups in a straw-lined pit. Now the fire's gone, and the damp cold has returned, creeping into your bones like a second skin. You lift your head, the roof above you drips onto your hair through a patch of moss. Your back aches, your legs are numb. This is the morning you wake up in. And remember, there is no such thing as comfort here. And fallen leaf. The world wakes without mercy outside. The land looks deceptively peaceful, and mist curls over the bog, soft and slow, and crows pick at the last of the barley stubble, cawing like old spirits. You hear hoofbeats in the far distance, not a neighbor. Never a neighbor. The door creaks open with your hand, stiff from the cold. And suddenly, it all hits you. NTHE, wind slaps your cheeks, damp and sharp with moss and salt. Your bare feet sink into mud. The thatch behind you flaps loosely, barely hanging on. Your stomach growls like something alive. You're already behind on chores, behind on rent. You can't afford to fall behind on fear. Not today in cold face. Surprise fact, your coat could kill you. You wear a tattered wool cloak your uncle left behind before he disappeared last winter. Not that it does much. It smells like damp hound fur and old sweat. But you keep it close. NWHY? Because owning too fine a cloak or riding too fine a horse could have you arrested. Under the penal laws, even appearing wealthy as a Catholic is enough to draw suspicion. A coat that keeps you warm could mark you as a traitor, or worse, as someone worth robbing. You've seen it happen. In a neighbor hung by his heels outside town for refusing to sell a fine riding horse. His family still walks barefoot to church, barely survives the rain. And you walk past a Protestant schoolhouse. Children inside read aloud from a Bible. You pause, only for a moment. NBUT, a man inside sees you. He narrows his eyes. Not a greeting, and a reminder. You don't belong. Your kind was banned from school decades ago. And still, your youngest brother practices letters in secret by scratching the alphabet with a stick into muck behind your hut. Bread hunger that doesn't leave. You haven't eaten since yesterday. You try a boiled potato and a slice of dry oatcake. You try not to think about it, but your body reminds you with every step. Your knees tremble. Your hands shake as you gather turf from the bog. NTHE bog is quiet. And too quiet. You glance behind you often, even though no one follows, because you've heard stories of boys taken while cutting turf, of girls never seen again after picking rushes. NTHE English soldiers rarely patrol here, but informants do, and a neighbor desperate for coin can become a stranger before sunset. You keep cutting turf anyway, and because without it you freeze, and frozen children make easy corpses. No silences in peace. You pass by your cousin Mabe's cottage, or where it used to be. It's burned now. Just a skeleton of charred wood and scorched stone. They said she was teaching Irish prayers to children. One of them must have told someone. You never saw her again, only the ash. And so now your prayers are in silence, and no Latin, no Irish. Just eyes closed, mouth shut, fists clenched against the cold. And you hope, Amadeen su etzeme hope, Amadeen su head back from the bog. A cart rumbles down the path. An English landlord's agent sits high on it, smug in a fur coat. He does not look at you, but you feel his eyes. He is looking for someone behind on rent, someone who's been feeding their children more than their quota allows, someone who still dares to teach Irish. He's not here to ask. He's here to decide. You lower your gaze. You don't nod. You don't smile. You don't speak. You become smaller than the road, lesser than the wind. NHE passes. You don't look up until the cart is gone. NN candle, little acts of resistance. By the time the sun nears its peak and a pale blur behind thick clouds, you've gathered turf, fetched water, and cleaned out the coop, gnaw before a bite to eat. And back inside, your mother peels the black off a rotten potato. She saves what she can, boils the rest. You help, because hunger doesn't wait for laws. And this sharing of bitter food in silence is an act of rebellion. And every meal eaten under British lawn is a prayer you never spoke aloud. Fog theme, whisper returns. You sit on the step after the chores, holding a chipped wooden spoon. A neighbor walks by and nods silently. He's missing 3 fingers, lost to frost last year. You watch the mist roll in again. And soft, silent, unstoppable. And again, your grandmother's whisper returns, and one field plowed by silence, and will grow 1,000 stories of resistance. You don't feel strong, but strength here is quiet, and survival in is the loudest act of all. Your first task, and stay alive long enough to reach midday. It's harder than it sounds. And cloud with rain, nothing is simple. The chickens are missing again. The coop door, half-hinged, swings open in the wind. You curse under your breath, not too loud, and trudge through slush barefoot, skin already numb. One hen lies dead near the fence. Fox got it, another flaps behind a hedgerow, stuck in a snare someone else set. And your snare, NSET, last night. And you forgot. You untangle it, whispering apologies, and cradle the hen to your chest. She's trembling. So are you. Both of you trying to survive a world that's forgotten you exist. And brain, internal conflict begins. You try to walk confidently back toward the cottage. But inside what if they notice I don't belong here? What if your face gives you away? Too proud, too Irish, too angry. What if your eyes don't lower fast enough when the agent comes again? What if someone saw you whispering that prayer yesterday? What if someone saw you? You are afraid of being seen, but more afraid of being noticed. And so you make yourself small, and smaller than the wind, and a hiking boot. The world takes more than it gives you. Sit to patch your only shoes. Again, and one soul is worn through, flapping like a mouth that speaks no hope. You pierce the leather with a bone needle, your hands red from cold. Your little sister sits beside you, counting prayer beads without saying a word. You ask how many times she's done the rosary. She shrugs. And then no one keeps count anymore. And only quiet. And broom, daily labor equals survival. Your father is already out, clearing drainage from the peat bog. You take the pail and begin your round and fetch water from the stream, dodging watchful eyes that scrub the black mold from the inside wall and stoke the fire with the last of yesterday's turf and dig up the few surviving turnips. The soil is wet and sour, like everything here. It clings to your knees, your elbows, your ribs, like it wants to pull you back in. And even the earth doesn't feel like it's yours. And rockland that hates you back. They say the land is sacred, but it doesn't feel holy today. NTHE barley fields are still flooded. The fence has collapsed again under wind. You hear a neighbor's cough carry across the hills. Ragged, weak, consumption, maybe. There's no doctor. Not for your kind. You keep digging. Because dinner won't grow itself. Main stew. The worst part, B-U-T. The worst part isn't what's missing. Not food. Not clean water. Not rest. NTHE. Worst part is the eyes. NTHE ones that glance just a little too long. The ones that narrow when you cross a path. Informants, they say, make more money than priests. That's not a joke. And everyone is hungry, urine and betrayal feeds mouths faster than loyalty, ear and balance scale. No room for errand. You remember last month, the widow O'Halloran took a single sack of oats from the landlord's barn. Her daughter was starving. Someone saw. Erin told the constable, NTHE next morning. She was dragged out by her hair and beaten in front of her children. Your sister cried the whole night after. You didn't? You just stared at the fire and whispered her name. Once in brain, the shadow grows. You wonder, am I strong enough for this? NTHE hunger doesn't kill you. Not directly. It just takes away your will. It just takes away your will, one cold morning at a time. You shake your head. You can't think like that. You have to keep going, even if your ribs hurt when you breathe, even if your fingernails are black from turf, even if the sky hasn't been blue in a week. In feather of fading language, THAT night, you hear your uncle teaching the younger ones an old song, in Irish, and it's soft, slow, like moss clinging to stone poinen. It tastes like the past, and it sounds illegal. You listen from the shadows. You try to mouth the words, but they feel foreign now, even though they were once your lullabies. You haven't spoken them in years. They beat that tongue out of schoolboys. They fined your cousin for naming his child Mare. Now he calls her Mary and pretends it doesn't sting. Fire resistance isn't loud. You sit near the fire before bed. Your mother mends clothes with a candle nub. Your sister washes her hands with cold rainwater. No one speaks that end, but everyone knows. You survived another day, that's something. And outside wolves howl from the woods, end. But the real danger doesn't howl. It knocks, end, and it smiles. And it wears the law, NN fog foreshadow. The next trial, the next trial. You hear a rumor that the landlord will visit in person tomorrow, N, that's rare, N. When landlords ride out from Dublin, it usually means something NA new taxon. An eviction or worse, a test of loyalty. You've seen tenants forced to recite Protestant prayers in exchange for leniency. And one boy refused. You never saw him again. Only his boots floating down the stream. You clench your fists. You can't fail. Not now. Not when your sister still has a fever. Not when the turnips are almost gone. You ask yourself again, maybe I'm not meant for this. Maybe there's something wrong with you. You still remember a warm bed. You still dream in Latin and Irish. Maybe you were meant to be a poet, not a farmer. Maybe the gods made a mistake. NBUT. The wind outside has no patience for doubt. It howls like memory one on Samire, and your stomach growls like guilt. In SO you rise, and you keep working, because tomorrow, someone may ask what you believe, and you better have an answer. There's no room for weakness in this world, because even God must be hidden. And when the law calls your worship treason, faith becomes an act of defiance. Sunrise dawn is not safe. You rise before the sun. Not out of habit. Out of necessity, THE fields are still cloaked in fog. You step outside barefoot again. Your cloak is soaked from the damp again. Your hands carry no torch, only a loaf of oat bread, wrapped in linen, in a silent offering. You walk with your family, not saying a word, because silence is the only thing the wind doesn't betray. Today is Sunday, but there's no church en rock, the Mass rock. You follow the path over the ridge, then down the slope, and through the thick briars and sheep tracks, and until the land opens to a quiet clearing. At its center, a gray stone slab covered in moss, its edges worn by centuries of kneeling hands. You call it a mass rock. The priest is already there, not in robes, not with bells, but in a threadbare coat and heavy hood. He looks more like a runaway than a shepherd of souls. And maybe he is, and fire faith in hiding. The congregation is small, maybe 20. Old women with shawls pulled low. And young boys with hollow eyes, one child missing a shoe, all Catholic. All illegal, The priest whispers the first prayer in Latin. No one repeats it aloud, but everyone mouths the words. Because to say them is to risk your name, in your home, in your life. And still, you say them in speech balloon, thematic repetition. You bow your head, press your knuckles to the dirt. The wind tugs at your cloak. You are not in a church. You are not safe and no safe. But still you kneel. And in your mind, your grandmother's words return. Are no safe? You are not just a servant. You are the offering. NTHAT phrase wraps around your chest like a second cloak. You don't cry, but you could. Because for the first time this week, you feel something larger than fear. In baguette bread, communion in silence, The priest lifts a crust of barley bread. In, not a wafer, not blessed wine. There's no chalice, only a chipped bowl of water from a mountain spring. NBUT still, he says the words, Noc est enim corpus meum. This is my body. You close your eyes and your stomach growls, but you ignore it. This is not a meal. It is a memory. It is a memory, a ritual in exile. You are hungry, not just for food, for dignity, for God. Magnifying glass. The stakes. He said Mass near Glencree, and then someone, a boy, they said, turned informer. The redcoats arrived before the final prayer. They took him by the arms mid-benediction. He never resisted. He only said, Deus vobiscum, God be with you. They dragged him off. He was never seen again. NBUT his cross, carved from a rowan branch, still lies at the foot of this rock. You glance at it now, and you wonder, what kind of God asks you to kneel when the world spits in your face? Brain. Internal conflict. You don't know what you believe anymore. The Bible says the meek will inherit the earth, but you've only seen them inherit hunger and bruises. You remember what it was like as a child, kneeling in secret, and asking why your family couldn't sing hymns loud like the Protestants in town. Your father said N, because they sing too loud. We pray to something older. You didn't understand it then. You still don't fully, but you feel it now, in your knees, in your breath, in the stillness between the priest's words, in bell, the secret bell, at the end of the Mass, in a boy, no older than 12, rings a small sheep bell, once, softly. And everyone knows what it means. Scatter, N-N-O-T, because danger is certain. But because it always might be, N-T-H-E, priest tucks the linen cloth into a satchel. No cross, no chalice, no evidence. You leave nothing behind but footprints and breath. Notka nolo ritual that stays with you. You walk home the long way. No pee through the gorse and ferns. Every branch crack feels like a patrol. Every bird cry makes you flinch. No pee, and yet your mind repeats the same words and over, like a heartbeat. And you are not just a servant, you are the offering. You don't know what it means. Not exactly. NBUT, it feels true. And new moon evening prayer. THAT, night, your mother lights a stub of candle, sets it near the window, and you know what it means. It's a sign to any traveling priest, a quiet invitation, and you are welcome here. There is a bed, there is bread, there is silence. And with that small light, your house becomes more than a house. Yours becomes a sanctuary. Yours becomes a sanctuary. Yours becomes a sanctuary. Yours becomes Sephor's peaceful. Yours becomes Sephor's shakol on us person in bed. The world still watches. You lie down on the straw mat again. You think about what your mother said last winter. We have lost our land, our schools, our language. But if we lose our God, we lose ourselves. You didn't answer then. But now, under the chill wind and the flickering light, you understand what she meant. They can ban the Masen. They can outlaw your saints. They can burn your books and your names. NBUT. They cannot take what lives in quietly inside you. You're dreaming of warm bread. It's still dark outside. Your mother is stoking the hearth. Your little brother curled up beside you like a puppy in the folds of an old wool blanket. The smell of turf smoke clings to your skin. There's no butter, no meat, but for a moment it feels like enough. Then, thump, and a horse whinnies outside, and boom, and a fist like iron on wood. Your father doesn't move fast enough. The door bursts inward with a crash like thunder. One with mud up to his knees. One grinning end. The last holds a parchment with wax dripping like blood. Out, now, all of you. No explanation. No reason, just orders. Your mother grabs the crucifix. Your mother cries out. You're pulled by the arm into the freezing morning, barefoot on wet stone, heart thudding like a trapped bird. Your father pleads, "In the name of Christ, what do you want?" NBUT, they don't answer him. One soldier walks straight to the hearth. Doesn't even look. He lifts the slab of stone. They knew. Your breath catches. He reaches beneath. His gloves scrape the dust, and he pulls it out. NTHE book, wrapped in waxed cloth. Hidden for decades. Your family's Bible. Not in Latin. Not in English, but in Irish, the tongue your grandmother whispered to you before she died, the tongue of lullabies, of saints, of secret masses in fields. You know it by the worn leather binding, the bit of twine your father tied around it when the last bishop was arrested. You try to speak, but your lips don't work. NTHE officer turns it over in his hands, sneering. Now, illegal publication. Foreign script. Popish venom. NHE holds it up like it's disease. You can't believe they're touching it without even crossing themselves. Your father steps forward. It's the gospel. The same gospel as yours. NBUT1 soldier strikes him hard across the jaw. He falls into the mud. Your mother screams. Your brother clings to her skirts. You stand there, too old to be shielded, too young to be silent. And then they light the torch. Knit crackles. Amber sparks dance in the air like devils. NHE lowers it. The flame kisses the cloth and the book begins to smoke. You want to run to it and to tear it from the fire. But your legs are stone. Your arms are trembling. NTHE pages shrivel first. NTHE curling edge of Genesis. The prayer your grandmother taught you, gone in a blink, and Psalms evaporate into cinders. Matthew's gospel folds inward like a dying bird. NTHE twine splits, the spine cracks. Ash flutters like snowfall around your feet. The hawker. Your mother drops to her knees. She's praying, fast and broken in Irish. The words come like sobs. The soldiers don't even look at her. One kicks the smoldering cover into the muck. Another spits beside it. This is what happens to rebels who read in the devil's tongue, he says. And next time we won't burn the book first. Then they leave. Their boots splash through the puddles, back to the road. You stare at the blackened pile. No longer a Bible. No longer anything. You remember the last time it was opened. You were 11, and your father reading by candlelight, voice low so the neighbors wouldn't hear. He read the Beatitudes in Irish, and you felt like Jesus was standing right there in the room. Blessed are the poor in spirit. Now even that memory feels scorched. Your little brother tugs at your sleeve. Will God still hear us if we don't have his book? You can't answer him, because part of you isn't sure. You kneel in the ashes. You scoop a handful. It smells like turf and burned linen and something holy that's been desecrated. This was never just about paper and ink. This was about erasing your language, your people, your right to speak to God in the voice your mother gave you. You're 15.N, but you've aged 10 years in 10 minutes, and something hard is forming inside you. NNOT, hate. Not yet. N, something colder. A vow you don't even know how to speak yet, but you'll carry it until the end. Because they didn't just burn a book, they tried to burn your soul. They take the cow first, then the grain, then they say you still owe. You remember the cow more than the birthdays. You remember her smell, warm fur, sun-dried mud, breath like sweet hay. You named her Brid after the saint, and the protector of the hearth and the harvest. NSHE was the last thing in your life that still gave. This morning you woke with her lowing echo still in your ears, even though the barn's been empty since spring. You haven't tasted milk in weeks. Hunger has turned from a sharp scream to a dull knocking inside your ribs, constant, cruel, and companionable. Still, you rise with the light. NNOT because you believe in better days, but because if you don't tend the earth, you die faster. And worse, you give them an excuse. Word travels fast in the boglands. NTHE Tithemen are coming again. NTHE road is dry, so they'll move quick, their boots not weighed down by mud or conscience. The thatched roofs of your village, once bright with smoke from cooking fires, now just sag like tired shoulders. Children don't laugh anymore. Their eyes are wide and watchful, like foxes. NNO1 plays. No one sings. Even the wind through the trees sounds like it's whispering and hide what you can. Burn what you must. NBUT, what do you have left to hide? Your father is dead. Not from war. He never made it to war. Just the kind of death that creeps in slowly when you're told you owe more than you can give. I'm first. It took the cattle, then the tools, then the winter roof, then it took him. And the worst part? It wasn't even soldiers that did it. It was Irishmen. It was Irishmen. Men wearing red coats and Protestant titles. Men who speak your tongue when the English aren't listening. Do. Today, they arrive before noon. NNO knock. No warning. Just the rumble of hooves and boots and brass buttons glinting like coins you'll never hold. 3 of them. One reads from a list. And one writes in a ledger. And one carries a musket. Your mother stands still at the doorway and barefoot, hands trembling. But she does not beg. You notice that now, and how none of the grown-ups ever beg anymore. Begging stopped working generations ago. And they take the cow and bread, and they say her name wrong as they lead her away, as if mispronouncing her makes her less yours. NSHE hesitates, turns her head, looking for you. You bite the inside of your cheek until it bleeds. You will not cry NNOT for a cow, not in front of them. Then they walk to the storeroom, in the one you reinforced with wet clay and prayer. They rip the thatch from the top, grab the grain sacks, too green, still damp with life. You harvested early. You had no choice. You knew they'd come. You just didn't think they'd take everything. And they don't ask. And they don't explain. They tally it on their paper, and as if it were numbers and not your survival. And then, as if the sky hasn't fallen far enough, NT Hay hand you the paper, and a cold white sheet, and inked in perfect English script. And for she, tithe partial, debt remaining, £1, 5 shillings, expect further collection. You blink, you read it again, £1? That's what a landlord earns from 20 families. You haven't seen a single silver shilling in your entire life, and they know that, and that's why they write it, and that's why it's printed in English, not Gaelic, not even spoken aloud. Because it's not meant to communicate, it's meant to crush. You want to scream. You want to grab the musket and fire it into the sky, just to feel powerful for a second. NBUT, you know what they do. You've seen it before. Nat Kilfanora, a boy threw a stone when they took his father's cart. They dragged him behind their horses for miles. He's still alive, they say, but no one's seen him walk since. Yudbo no Ahuyu. Back inside, your younger brother sits on the dirt floor, hugging the family Bible like a teddy bear. NTHE cover is cracked leather, the pages singed from when the English soldiers burned the chapel last year. You've memorized the Psalms, not because you believe anymore, but because they're the only words no one can take. Your mother stirs something in a pot. Just water, some boiled dock leaves. Maybe a turnip, if the neighbors were kind. You sit beside her, knees touching, and the silence between you is heavier than any tax. I remember, she finally says, and when Brid gave birth to her first calf, you were 8. You fed it with your hands. You nod, because you remember too. NBUT. You also remember the day that calf was taken, traded to pay the landlord's rent for land your great-grandfather once owned. That's the cruelest part of it all. It was yours. Before the penal laws. Before the plantations. Before the British Crown sent their landlords to slice Ireland up like a roast and hand it out to strangers, your family's name is still carved in the old stones behind the church ruins. NBUT, now you need permission to walk that land. You need to pay to live on what you already bled for, and somehow you still owe more. You lie down that night in a house that groans with every wind gust. The roof leaks, the hearth is dark, the blankets are thin. But worse than the hunger is the math. NHOW. Do you feed a family with no cow? And no seed? And no grain? And a debt that grows every month? NHOW. Do you survive when even survival is taxed? And Atenklo, your mother speaks quietly from across the dark. Maybe we should leave and go to Limerick. I heard there's work on the river docks. You know she doesn't mean it, but you don't argue, because arguing would mean you have the strength to hope. And you used that up years ago. Outside, the wind howls through the thatch. It sounds like Bride, lowing from across the fields. But you know she's already halfway to the next market town. You'll never see her again. They took the cow, then the grain, and now they say you still owe. You close your eyes, and for the first time in weeks, and you pray. NNOT for food, not for forgiveness. You pray for the day they'll take nothing more, and for the strength to still be alive when that day comes. You remember it like a half-dream, not forest clearing, and a ring of stones still warm from the fire, and one candle flickering in the breeze, and a man, older than your father but younger than your grandfather, sitting on a rock with a bundle of papers and a voice that sounded like poetry made flesh. You don't even know his name. No one ever said it out loud. NHE was simply the master. You met him in the gray hush before morning, guided by your cousin through the mist-covered bogs, where every step squelched and every breath hung in the cold like a secret. You ducked beneath branches, scrambled over stone walls, until finally you saw it, NTHE Hedge School, NNO walls. No desks, just rough boys like yourself, sitting on cold stones and kneeling in mud, clutching slates and stolen scraps of parchment. And it was illegal. All of it. Catholics weren't allowed to teach, to learn, to gather like this. MBUT here, in this clearing between the thickets and hawthorn, Ireland remembered itself. NTHE master began the lesson, not with math, not with Latin, but with a poem members older than the English crown. He spoke of Cuchulainn, of Tara, of saints and stones and skies. He told you what it meant to be Irish before the chains. And then he taught you how to read. N-N-O-T in English, in Irish dot letters, danced on the slate beneath your fingers. In strange shapes at first, but soon they made sense. You saw your name the way your ancestors would have written it. You read aloud a prayer that hadn't been spoken in a church in 50 years. You heard the rhythm of a language almost buried, and for the first time, you understood why they wanted it dead. It wasn't just words. It was memory. It was resistance. And for that, it had to stay hidden. You learned fast, not just because you wanted to, but because you had to. The master never stayed in one place long. Some days you found him in a ruined barn. Other times under a fallen tree. Once inside a cave with a single shaft of light. And always watching. Always listening. Because the redcoats knew. They knew these schools still existed. Like roots beneath scorched soil. And they sent patrols, searching for children with ink on their hands and the spark of defiance in their eyes. One morning you arrived early, before even the birds had begun to sing. NTHE clearing was empty, the stones cold, the candle gone. Only the faintest outline of footprints remained in the dew. You waited. 10 minutes 20. Nothing NTHE head school had vanished. As if it had never been there at all. NTHE next day, a rumor crept through the village like smoke, and the master was caught. Not by soldiers, but by a neighbor, paid in coin and spite. They said he was taken in the night, dragged through the mud in chains. They said he didn't scream, just kept whispering verses in Irish, even as the blood filled his mouth. You never saw him again. NBUT in your sleep, you sometimes hear him still, reciting Yeats before Yeats was born. And every time you pick up a slate, and every time your lips shape a word in the old tongue, you remember the man who taught in silence and vanished before dawn. And you wonder NHOW many more were there? How many voices were never heard? How much of Ireland was erased before it could even be written down? You don't say these thoughts aloud. NNOT here. NNOT here. N not when there's always someone listening. NBUT deep in your chest, beneath the fear and hunger. N a flame still burns, NS small, all flickering, NBUT alive. Because once you sat beneath a tree and learned how to read your own name in your own language. And no matter what laws they pass, no matter how many books they burn, and that memory is yours. You don't find out by accident. You already knew. There had been signs in the smudge of ash on the floor, in the sudden silence when you entered, in the way your younger brother hummed melodies too old for his age, in songs that belonged to your grandfather's grave. And it's winter when you finally see it for yourself. The sky hangs low like a ceiling of wet wool. Outside, the moor is gray and frozen, and the thatch of your roof shedding ice like dandruff from God's shoulders. And inside, your cottage is cold and quieter than usual. Too quiet. Your father and mother are away, visiting a cousin with news of a landlord's tax hike. You're supposed to be chopping wood behind the barn. But something pulls you back. You step into the house. You don't stomp. You don't stomp. You don't call out. You just listen. And there it is, and a rhythm of whispers, soft and deliberate, and a language not meant to survive this century. And the vowels curve through the rafters like smoke. You creep toward the back room. NTHE door is slightly open. Inside, 5 children, none older than 10. Barefoot, noses red from cold, in their eyes locked on your brother, your 12-year-old brother, kneeling before the hearth, in tracing letters into soot and dust with a burnt stick. In A, U. He chants them like a prayer, and they repeat after him, hesitant, then stronger. You blink hard, and you remember that sound in that cadence. Your grandfather used to recite the same way, before they silenced him. You haven't heard your mother speak Irish in over 2 years. Not since the priest was caught, dragged off in the night for conducting Mass in secret Gaelic. Not since Mrs. Fallon's son was lashed by the redcoats for saying Daya, D-H-U-I-T, on the road. NBUT now, here it is again. Your brother is teaching the old tongue, and the children, they are learning like sponges pressed to history. You should stop him. This could get him flogged. It could get your family's hut torched. It could get you all sent away, or worse, made to kneel in the mud like Mr. Brannigan and kiss the Englishman's boot. But you don't move. You barely breathe. Because the longer you watch, the more you realize. This is not just a lesson. It's defiance that on a whisper against extinction. A smuggled relic passed hand to hand like contraband scripture. One of the children asks what the letter F means in Irish. Your brother pauses, smiles, and tells her en fete. It means welcome. She repeats it, and the others follow. En faute. Faute. NTHE word swells like a heartbeat in your chest. Your brother sees you now, and he freezes. And the children go silent. NTHE stick drops from his hand. And he waits for you to yell, and to shame him, and to warn him, and to stop this before it spreads. NBUT, you don't, you walk over, and you kneel, and you pick up the stick, and in the soft bed of soot, and you write the next letter, NG, for gra, love. Your brother's breath catches, the children smile. You say nothing, but your presence says enough. NTHAT, night, dinner is quiet. Your father asks how the chopping went. You say it was cold. Nothing more. Your brother eats with lowered eyes. Your mother pretends not to glance at the soot smudges on his fingers. No one mentions the alphabet drawn in ash. No one dares name what it meant. NBUT later, as you lie on your straw mattress, enwrapped in burlap, and listening to the wind whistle through the broken shutter. You feel it? Something has changed. NNTHE next week. The lessons continue. You start sitting in more often. Nuzadam helping when you can. You bring in scraps of old wood to write on. You draw maps of Ireland, not the one they teach in English schools, but the real Ireland. The one with hills named in Gaelic, and with rivers that remember who they belonged to before Cromwell turned them red. Your brother corrects your pronunciation once. You don't mind. He's better than you now. More fluent, more brave. One day, one of the boys, Thomas, the blacksmith's lad, and asks if you can teach him a song. You do. N'oro se dobhita abhaile. Your voice cracks. The children don't mind. They sing it anyway. It feels like mass, like something sacred being passed around. But danger is never far. One night, while your brother is asleep, you wake to voices outside and two redcoat patrols questioning your neighbor. They're asking about unusual gatherings, children leaving cottages at strange hours, rumors of someone teaching unlicensed speech. You hold your breath. They don't knock in. Not this time. NBUT. You know the time is coming. NNTHE next day, you tell your brother it has to stop. Just for a while. He nods, but you can see the fight in him. He doesn't want to lose this. So you make a deal and you'll teach him everything you remember, and he'll memorize it all, and every phrase, and every blessing, and every curse. Every name of every county in Gaelic, NHE, becomes a vessel.n, a fire that you feed in silence, a rebel in a child's skin. And years from now, you'll be gone, but he'll still be alive. And so will the language, Shen, because of him. Because of you, because neither of you let it die in when the world demanded silence. Some things cannot be outlawed. N-N-O-T, faith. N. Not memory. Not a brother's quiet rebellion carved in soot. Not a language that still knows your name when all the others forget. Not. You're standing in line, and all around you is hunger. Real hunger. Not the ache of skipped meals, not the rumble after a day's labor, but the slow, grinding silence of a stomach that has long forgotten what bread even smells like. Your legs are thin. Your lips are cracked. Your mother holds your little sister, who hasn't spoken in days. Not out of silence, but because she's forgotten how to cry. NTHE year is 1742. The worst winter in living memory has swallowed Connacht. The potatoes rotted in the ground, the oats frozen in the sacks. Even the sheep lie stiff beneath the snow, their eyes glassy, their wool tangled in ice. And yet, today, a miracle. Bread. You heard rumors in the dark. And they're giving it away. The English, the Protestants. Food from the landlord's estate, loaves. Real ones. NSO, you walked 12 miles through frost and silence just to get here. To a table built beneath the ruined church. And a table stacked with brown bread and silver spoons. And an altar of mercy if you squinted through the cold. NBUT beside the bread is a man in pale face. Black robes and a crucifix around his neck. But not yours, his collar stiff. His eyes judgmental. He's not just handing out bread. He's handing out conversion. Are you prepared to renounce popery? He asks the man in front of you. NTHE man nods, shamefaced. NTHE priest smiles. Then welcome. Take and eat. NHE tears off a piece of bread and drops it in the man's hands. Next, a woman steps forward. She hesitates. My children, they haven't. Do you accept the Church of England as the true Church of Christ? NTHE woman's eyes flicker. She trembles. She looks back at her 3 children, then nods. Good. The man says, And bread is hers. Now it's your turn. You shuffle forward. NHE eyes your face. N. You. Name. You whisper it. He squints. Nah. Gaelic, isn't it? Do you speak English? You nod slowly. Not well, not enough. NHE clicks his tongue. Then I'll ask simply. NHE leans in. Are you prepared to abandon your old faith, your papist superstitions, and swear before God and man that you are no longer Irish? Your mouth opens, but nothing comes out. NHE gestures to the bread. I cannot give you the body of nourishment until you accept the truth. Behind you, your sister wheezes. Your mother looks down. Her hand tightens around yours. You could lie. You could say, walk away. Then survive. NBUT. Your grandfather's voice echoes in your skull. Then your father's blood. Then the priest who hid in the hills, just to whisper mass. You shake your head. NTHE man sighs. NHE waves his hand. No bread for rebels. You're pulled away. The guards don't beat you. They don't need to. Humiliation is sharper than hunger. Your mother presses snow to your sister's lips. She's too weak to swallow, and in the dark your own stomach turns in on itself, a cruel empty drum. Your father doesn't say a word. Your father doesn't say a word, but he does something he hasn't done in months. He kneels in the snow and begins to pray in Irish. You join him because you were taught that to die hungry is a tragedy. But to die forgetting who you are, that is worse. And so, you starve in the name of memory, of ancestors, son of the band mass of the songs you still sing in secret, of a land that has forgotten how to protect its own, but still whispers your name in every gust of wind. You are Irish, and your hunger will not make you forget that. You haven't eaten in 2 days. And NOT since the last scrap of barley was scraped from the bottom of the wooden bin. Not since your mother split a shriveled turnip in half, pretending she wasn't hungry so you could eat. Not since your father traded your wool cloak for a handful of oats that turned out to be moldy. Now there is only the wind. It seeps through the stone cracks of your family's one-room cottage like a ghost, whistling low through the beams, curling around your bones. You are 14, but your ribs push through your skin like someone much older. Your knees ache when you bend to lift your sister, who has grown too weak to rise on her own. She asks for bread. She dreams of it. She speaks of warm loaves as if they're fairy tales. You say nothing. You know the only thing rising in this country is the price of silence. And outside, hooves clatter on frozen earth. You freeze. NBUT, the sound no longer strikes terror. Because what is there to lose now? You've already watched your neighbor's land taken by force. You've already seen the church where you were baptized torn down stone. You've already buried your uncle in a shallow grave on stolen land. When the door opens this time, it doesn't burst in with violence. It eases open, softly, with care, almost as if it's apologizing for what it carries. NTHE man who steps inside is English, well-dressed, gloved. His shoes are too clean for this place. NBUT, he speaks Irish, not perfectly, but gently. Practiced. NHE smiles at you. There's food waiting, he says. Shelter. Safety. A new name even. You only have to take the oath. NT. Your mother lowers her eyes. She knows what he means. It's the same thing they've been saying for years now. N. Take the king's bread, swear by his church, and your belly will never be empty again. Major become one of them. Major become one of them. Major have heard the others talk about it. Some say it's no sin, just a survival tactic. Some say God forgives starvation. Others say your soul is all you have left in a country where they've taken everything else. You look at your sister. Her lips are dry, her fingers cold. She wouldn't last another week. Will we be safe? You ask. NTHE man smiles again. You'll be English, he says. And what does that mean? It means you'll never speak your mother tongue in public again. It means you'll sign a name that isn't yours, on papers that bind you to a crown that calls you less than human. It means you'll sit in Protestant pews under painted ceilings while your ancestors rot in unmarked fields. It means you'll live. Maybe NBUT, but will you be alive? You follow him anyway, and your stomach makes the choice your soul will carry forever. And outside, the cart is waiting, covered in tops, and smelling of cured meat. You and your sister climb aboard, and your mother hesitates. Then she whispers a prayer, not to the God of the English, but the one hidden in hedgerow masses and kitchen whispers. May he forgive us. She says, in here. The journey is quiet. No one speaks. MBUT the wind tells stories. Stories of neighbors who once stood proud and barefoot in their own fields, now bending in stranger churches for crusts of bread. Stories of fathers who signed the oath, and sons who never forgave them. You arrive in a clean settlement, NS-tone houses. Point NS-tone houses. Cheatin English chapel with a tall white cross that casts long shadows at noon. You're taken to a school, not like the ones the hedge teachers used to run in secret, and beneath trees and beside ditches, and where you learn to read psalms in Irish with one eye on the horizon. NNO, this school is warm, official, respectable. There's porridge. You eat until your sides ache. You cry when no one's watching. N, you and your sister are given English names. You're called Daniel now. Your sister becomes Mary, even though she always liked her Irish name, Maya. You're told to forget it. Forget it all. NTHE priest who oversees your conversion is kind. No kind. He speaks softly, but you can hear the weight in his words, or no card will understand. The Church of Rome is a dead thing in Ireland. Come into the light. You repeat after him. You say the words. You drink the wine. You eat the bread. You feel full for the first time in weeks. And yet, you feel nothing. Not warmth. Not salvation. Only hunger. NNOT, the kind that grumbles in your stomach. Nen, but the kind that grows in your chest. That gnaws at you when you lie awake at night, wondering if your father's grave would accept the new name you wear. Months pass. You're still alive, but something inside you is not. Nanba. The fields bloom again, but not for you. You are now a stranger in your own land, allowed to walk the lanes but not to claim them. NTHE. English children laugh at your accent. You work beside them but never with them. NTHE Protestants in town call you a super, someone who traded faith for food. NBUT the Catholics. They call you worse, and a traitor, and a lost soul. And sometimes you wonder if they're right. You speak Irish only in dreams now. You whisper it when your sister sleeps, and hoping she still remembers. One day, while walking to the chapel, and you see a boy your age watching you from the trees. You recognize him. NHE was once your neighbor. You stole apples together before the famine turned you into ghosts. NHE stares at you like he's never seen you before. Then he spits on the ground. Better to die hungry, he says, than to live on your knees. You don't respond. You just walk on, because there is no argument that fills the space between your ribs. You eat now, but you are still starving, not for food, but for something you can't name anymore. You want your father's voice. You want the songs your mother sang while churning butter. You want to kneel in a mossy glen with your people, and not in a marble room with men who smile too much. You want to believe the God you swore away still listens. NBUT most of all. You want to forget what it costs to survive. Non-parcours. Your name used to mean something. Once, it echoed in the green hills like a blessing, passed from father to son, sung during harvest, carved into stone crosses older than kings. But now, it's a risk, and a liability, and a relic of a language your landlord calls uncivilized. They told you your name would bring you trouble, and they were right. Not of Venkori and the priest. It was the schoolmaster who refused to pronounce it. Then the priest, an Englishman sent from far away, who asked to simplify it. And now it's the magistrate, scribbling in a registry with ink as black as the law. You are no longer Seamus MacGiola Bride. You are now simply James Bride, a name that feels like a shirt stolen from another man's back. Too stiff, too foreign, too quiet. You try saying your real name under your breath, but even that feels dangerous now. Small Diamond, you still dream in Irish. You've tried, truly tried, not to think in the old words. NBUT, they sneak in like mist. They slip through the cracks in your resolve, wrapping themselves around your tongue when you dream. You wake some nights whispering Mo Mhather, Mo Dhya, Mo Bhaile, my mother, my God, my home. Your wife tells you to stop. She's afraid, and you don't blame her. A boy in the next village was beaten bloody just for reciting a prayer in Irish. A girl was taken from her family and placed in an English correction school for refusing to renounce her name. So your wife says, forget, NBUT. How do you forget the sound of your mother's lullabies? The way your grandfather's voice cracked when he recited poems older than memory? How do you erase a language that lives in your very breath? There's a man, old crooked like a bent tree, who teaches secretly behind the chapel, maybe even a monken. Now he lives off scraps and teaches by moonlight then. You send your son to him in the dark, wrapped in wool, carrying a stick for protection. NHE returns each night with fire in his eyes, reciting poems, Latin verses, Irish proverbs long banned. He is learning history, the true kind. Not the one in the British books, but the history that bleeds. NBUT one night, the hedgemaster is gone. Your son returns silent and trembling. You find out later and Someone informed. They took the old man away, and then no trial. No charge. Just gone. Your son won't speak for days. Small Diamond, the psalm-singing Protestants offer charity. You pass them on the road sometimes. Church missionaries offering bread and a Bible. They smile politely. They call you brother. They hand out tracts in English, offer warm porridge, a place at the table, but only if you agree to worship with them. They call it superism. Charity with conditions, convert, take a new name, take a new tongue, and we will feed your children. You remember when your neighbor, starving, finally accepted. N.H.E. wept as he took the bowl. N.H.E. buried his father the next day, without a priest, without mass. N.T.H.E. priest refused to bury him in consecrated ground, called him traitor. N.B.U.T. when your child is dying, who do you betray? On Small Diamond. A language of ghosts. Even the land seems to forget. N.T.H.E. place names are changing. Bele and Tuber becomes Tober Town. Canok and Afrin becomes Mass Hill, then simply Hill 14. The roads are renamed, and maps are redrawn, and old graveyards fenced off, and no Irish allowed on the signs. N.B.U.T. the stones still remember. You run your hand across a crumbling wellhead with carvings in Ogham. Your grandmother once told you they were written by saints. Now they are meaningless to your children. NN01 teaches them. NN01 dares NN Small Diamond. Your silence is not consent. You no longer speak in public. In town, at market, you nod instead of greet. You gesture instead of pray. They think you are tame now, that you've been washed clean of rebellion. Deity inside you burn. And every time they mispronounce your name, every time they tell your son his accent is uncultured, every time they laugh at your stories or say your legends are superstitions, you feel it in your chest like thunder. They think silence means surrender, but it is only mourning Bath of Rajba. And mourning is just the first step of memory, Nen Small Diamond. You carve your real name in wooden late one night you sit by the hearth. N.T.H.E. house is still. You take the old family stick, a blackthorn shillelagh passed from your father to his, and with a dull blade you carve your true name in the wood. NMAC Giola Bride. It is sloppy, uneven, but it is real. You run your fingers over each groove like a rosary. And in that moment, you are yourself again. NNOT, a subject, not a tenant. NBUT, a son of a language that refuses to die. Small Diamond, your children whisper it too. In the shadows of their room, your children whisper stories. In ones their mother told them. In ones their grandfather half remembered before the cough took him. Stories of Cuchu Lane, and of Saint Brigid and the fire that never went out, and of the banshee that cried when your cousin died last spring. They ask you why the teachers at the new school never mention these stories, why their last name is misspelled on every ledger. You have no answer, so you kneel beside them, and you whisper the truth. Not loud, not proud, but enough to remember. Small Diamond final image. The name refuses to dine one day when the British leave. If they ever do, your name may still be erased from the records. The land will bear other titles. Your cottage will rot. NBUT, perhaps a child will find the blackthorn stick buried in ash and wonder what the symbols mean. Perhaps they will trace the letters with death. Perhaps they will feel in their bones the sound of your name. And perhaps they will whisper it and that will be enough. Nin. You die quietly, NNOT, in a blaze of defiance. Not with a musket in hand or a rebel yell on your lips, but in a silence so vast it swallows the sky. You die not in glory, but in obscurity. And perhaps that was their most enduring weapon, to make you disappear without notice. You die with your name written in no record. You die with no stone to mark where you rest. No priest dares come. He too fears the law, or perhaps he has already been exiled, his chapel converted to a sheep barn. And your family doesn't weep openly. They don't dare. They dig your grave at dusk, hands red from the cold earth. They lower you into the soil beside your mother, who also died nameless. And all around the fields of Ireland remain the same, rolling, ancient, eternal. But beneath them lies a generation that never got to speak, never got to pass on their knowledge, their faith, their language. NNTHE penal laws didn't kill you with bullets. They didn't need to. They simply wrote you out of life. They told you when you could worship, if at all. They told you what tongue you could use in court, then removed your access to court altogether. They told you your cattle weren't yours, your fields were not yours, your home? Yours only until a Protestant neighbor desired it. You became a ghost before you ever died. And as you slipped into that grave, in the world you knew, your Ireland slipped with you. But you were not alone. Thousands passed the same way you did. Men and women buried in ditches, priests hunted like animals, children raised in silence, their names forbidden and their futures predetermined. And a child once asked, "Why can't I learn to read?" And the mother had to say N because your soul is Irish. You see, they outlawed who you were, NNOT, for fear of rebellion, but for fear of memory, because memory can birth rebellion, and that's what terrified them most. Still, something survived. A whisper on the wind. A rebel verse scratched in charcoal on a cottage wall. An old woman who remembered a hymn and taught it to her daughter. In secret, a father who taught his son to sow potatoes in the rhythm of old Gaelic songs. Yes, they broke your laws, but the laws had already broken them. NSO. What else could they do? But pass on what little remained. NS. Your language didn't die. It slept in the roots of the heather, in the folds of old shawls, in the way your people held silence like a shield. One day it stirred. It woke in the songs of laborers, in the voices of children in the West, in the voices of children in the West, in where English had never fully taken root. Like peat under ash, the flame remained in years past. Decades turned to centuries, and empires shifted, but Ireland remembered. Your name may not have survived, Enang, but your defiance did. In every banned book hidden beneath floorboards. Enang every mass said in a forest clearing. In every woman who refused to anglicize her child's name, you became part of the land. In every a shadow behind the stone walls. In every a shed. In every a shed. A spirit that lingered where history dared not look. In every. And now they build statues. Now they hold commemorations. And now they teach the language in schools again. Now they wear the cross openly. Now the tricolor flies where once the Union Jack stood alone. NBUT, the ground beneath their feet, still holds your bones. And your silence still speaks. You died unknown, but you were not forgotten. Because forgetting requires permission, and Ireland never gave it. And even when they outlawed your tongue, she remembered its music. Even when they outlawed your church, she remembered the prayers. Even when they outlawed your land, she remembered your footsteps across it. They tried to erase you, but you cannot erase a people who hold memory in their blood. You were born with nothing, you died with even less, but you left behind a world stronger for having carried your pain. And now, in the chants of school children reciting old poems, and in the hands of musicians playing rebel tunes on battered fiddles, and in the solemn silence of stone chapels restored from ruins, you live again, N-N-O-T, as a man N, but as a presence. Tapmin A whisper, N-A witness, and somewhere, on a windy hill in Mayo, and a lone traveler walks past an unmarked grave. He doesn't know the name of the man beneath the soil, but he removes his cap anyway. NHE knows. Ireland remembers.